All right, another spark and another build. The tools are laid. Let's begin. We've spent time discussing the architects of this world, the Tool Titans. We've stared into the abyss with their corrupted reflections, the Rustborn.
But today, we're looking at a third path. Not one of structured creation or nihilistic destruction. It's the path of preservation. What happens when the world itself decides to fight back?
You get something else entirely. Not quite Titan, not quite Beast. Today, we are doing a deep dive into the mythic living guardians of balance, the Preservents.
But before that, you have to know the basics before playing Tools and Titans. Take it away, Toolin.
So, how do you play Tools and Titans? Let's walk through the heartbeat of a turn. It starts with a draw. That's the moment of hope or desperation.
Next, you charge. You commit your energy for the turn. This isn't just playing a resource, it's choosing your path. It's the strategic foundation of everything that comes next.
Then you build. You play your structures, your tools, you fortify your position. This is where you shape the battlefield to your will.
After that, you act. Unleash abilities, complete tasks, play those game-changing flux cards. This is the moment your strategy ignites.
And then, the clash. The reason we're all here. Your Titans battle, structures crumble. It's the conflict, the climax of your turn.
Finally, you end. A simple step, but it's a moment of commitment. You pass the turn, your board set. 6 steps. One epic battle.
All right, so let's start with the big question. Who or what are the Preservents? The art depicts them as these incredible fusions of animal and divinity.
That's the perfect way to describe them. Imagine nature's own answer to the corruption spreading across the land. The Preservents are magnificent hybrid beast titans. The lore says they are composed of 80% Titan logic and 20% raw primal beast essence.
What does that breakdown actually mean in practice? How does that manifest?
The Titan logic gives them purpose, programming, a defined role. They aren't just wild creatures, they are guardians of purity, defenders of specific zones. But that 20% beast essence, that gives them instinct, unpredictability, and a deep connection to the weave that pure Titans lack. It makes them living, breathing guardians, not just automatons.
So they're not just monsters, they're bioforged anomalies, designed with intent.
Exactly. They were crafted to be living seals, entities meant to reinforce the moral and structural balance of the entire mytho-industrial world. They stand as a direct counter to the decay of the Rustborn and the mindless destruction of the Chorot.
Let's talk about that contrast. A Chorot, for instance, might infect a weave node, turning it into a source of blight that damages everything around it. What would a Preservent do in that same situation?
A Preservent wouldn't just destroy the node. It would absorb the corruption, purify it, and reharmonize the weave. It heals the wound in the world rather than just cauterizing it. Where a Chorot exists only to destroy, a Preservent exists solely to preserve.
That brings us to their philosophy. What do they truly represent in the grand scheme of things?
On the surface, they represent restoration and regeneration. There are stories of blighted forests in the game's lore, completely drained by Rustborn industry, that were brought back to life over decades by the quiet work of Verdelume. But deeper than that, they represent symbiosis, the idea that nature and trade, living form and crafted logic can align.
And I read that some are connected to the 12 shrines, like they're failed prototypes. That seems like a huge lore point.
It is, and it's one of the most fascinating parts of their story. Some were, in fact, seal-engineered prototypes from a bygone era. Think of them as early, unstable attempts by the original creators to build guardians for the shrines.
So they were weapons or security systems that became something more?
Precisely. The original programming was too rigid, or the beast essence was too strong, and the projects were abandoned. But they didn't die. Over time, in the wild, they awoke into full sentience. They formed their own self-correcting faction, driven by their original purpose to protect, but now guided by their own wisdom.
And this awakening happened during the corruption tide? Paint a picture of that for us.
The corruption tide was a cataclysm. The sky was torn open by uncontrolled scorch storms. Think acid rain made of pure entropic energy. On the ground, hordes of rustborn and korit swarmed from the industrial hellscapes. It was an era of utter desperation, and the world's natural energy, the weave, was tearing itself apart trying to cope.
And in that chaos, the Preservents emerged.
Yes, the weave itself, in a desperate act of self-preservation, forged new biological defenses. It used leftover Titan blueprints, fused them with the essence of powerful beasts, and anchored them to the resonant energy of the zones they were meant to protect. They were born from the world's own need to survive.
Which brings us to where they live. You can't just find these creatures anywhere. They're zone-bound.
Precisely. They are deeply intrinsically tied to sacred, primal, or unstable regions. They rarely travel far, unless the weave itself is ruptured. Think of them as geniuses of their own environment.
So for instance, TerraVault's deep growth core. What is that place like?
The deep growth core is a cavern system miles beneath the surface, where the weave's earth energy is so raw it crystallizes. TerraVault doesn't just live there. It is the core's immune system. Its movements cause minor quakes that stabilize the entire region. It's a place of immense, silent power.
Incredible. So narratively, they're the world's immune system. But let's dive deeper into why they matter in the game itself. What's their function for a player?
Mechanically, they are the cornerstone of control, healing, and anti-corruption decks. If you're a player who loves building an unbreachable fortress, who enjoys watching your opponent's best strategies crumble against your resilience, this is your faction.
They're the ultimate defensive powerhouse, a true attrition faction.
Exactly. And they have abilities no one else gets. Things like seal-based mechanics and reversing Scorch interactions. They can literally lock other players out of a zone, making their opponent's cards useless until the lock is broken.
They are the natural order's final, unyielding counter-argument. Slow, deliberate, and incredibly hard to put down. Okay, let's get into the gears of it. The how. Every Titan turn, draw, charge, building act, clash, end. 6 steps, infinite ways to forge your victory.
And how the Preservents take those 6 steps is completely unique. Let's break down their core systems, starting with their signature mechanic, Seal Cast Synergy.
Walk me through it. Let's say I have the Preservent TerraVault on my field, and my opponent has just played a card that corrupts my sunken grotto zone. What happens?
Okay, so on your turn you could play a tool card called Weave Harmonizer. Instead of dealing damage, its effect is to remove all negative tokens from a zone and apply a Seal token. The moment that Seal token is placed, TerraVault's Seal Cast ability triggers. You might get to draw a card, gain charge points, or even trigger a secondary effect, like stunning an enemy Titan for a turn.
So your actions to heal the board are what activate your offense, or at least your control. That's brilliant. And this plays into their famous resilience. Let's talk regeneration.
It's what defines them. Most factions can heal hit points, but Preservents regenerate everything. Some can regenerate charge points every turn, others can pull specific tool or task cards from your junkyard, your discard pile, and put them back into your hand. It's not just healing, it's resource denial against your opponent and resource recursion for you.
Which makes their junkyard lock mechanics so brutal for Rustborn players. Explain how that works.
A key Rustborn strategy is to corrupt cards in your junkyard, then use those corrupted cards to fuel their own powerful abilities. Preservents can play abilities that purify or stabilize your own junkyard. This erases those negative tokens, effectively cutting off the Rustborn player's fuel source at the knees.
So, with all that in mind, let's talk about the Preservent 7. These are the core titans of the faction. Let's give them a proper introduction. Who's first?
Let's start with the king of the plateau, Verdelume. Elementally, he's fire and metal. He looks like a colossal lion made of cooling magma and obsidian plates. His role is zone reactive defense. His signature ability is Justice Roar, a seal cast that can cancel an opponent's flux card just as they play it.
The ultimate no. I like it. Next up is the one we mentioned, Terravault.
The great guardian of the deep, earth and barrier. Terravault is a massive tortoise-like beast whose shell looks like a geological map. He's the tank archetype. His whole goal is to stabilize zones, and every time he does, he gains defensive buffs and can trigger stuns on enemy titans. He's about making the board an impossible puzzle for your opponent.
Let's go from the earth to the sky. Ether Drake.
Ether Drake is wind and magic, a beautiful serpentine drake made of storm clouds and solidified lightning. It's a tempo disruption artist. Its abilities let you reroute enemy cast abilities, forcing them to target their own titans, or increasing their cost so they can't be played. It messes with your opponent's entire turn.
Devious. What about Spindrossel? Sounds like a trap setter.
You nailed it. Nature and decay. Spindrossel is a terrifying, elegant spider-like titan woven from iridescent silk and blooming, toxic flowers. It excels at trap synergy. It places blooming chord tokens on zones, and when an enemy titan enters or acts there, the chords bind them, preventing movement or task completion.
Okay, who's next on the list?
Shellomant, the master of defense. Earth and armor. Imagine a giant pangolin whose scales are made of interlocking, ancient stone structures. Shellomant is an absolute fortress. It's a structure harmonizer, meaning it gets exponentially stronger for every structure card you have in play. The goal is to build an unbreakable wall your opponent can't even scratch.
2 to go. Tell me about Verdelume.
Verdelume is bioenergy and flora, the bloomkeeper. It's a gentle-looking, deer-like creature with glowing green antlers from which new plants grow. But its gameplay is incredibly potent. It recycles tasks from your junkyard and grows your energy pool based on organic decay, both yours and your opponent's. It turns loss into growth.
And finally, the one that sounds the most epic. Ignifane.
Ignifane is heatlight and soul regeneration, a majestic phoenix made of pure, white-hot light and obsidian feathers. It embodies the Phoenix loop engine. Its power is rooted in death and rebirth. When Ignifane is destroyed, it triggers a massive regeneration event. You might get to heal your other titans, play a card from your deck for free, and then return Ignifane to your hand at the start of your next turn. To beat Ignifane, you have to beat it over and over and over again.
So with these 7, you can build wildly different decks. A defensive seal control deck with Terravault and Shellomant, just fortifying zones and denying everything.
Or that eco-tempo bloom deck with Verdelume and Spindrossel. It starts slow, but you end up with this overwhelming board of interconnected growth and traps that your opponent can't untangle.
That Phoenix loop engine with Ignifane sounds perfect for players who love high-risk, high-reward combos. And Ether Drake's Flight Disruptor style is for the player who loves psychological warfare.
It all comes back to their narrative identity. The first mistake and the last hope. They represent this constant, delicate balancing act. Some were accidents that became miracles. Others were weapons that became saints.
They are the guardians. The immovable objects. They were never meant to rule, only to preserve.
But when the weave breaks, even balance must roar. They are the calm before the storm and the storm itself, a truly unique and rewarding faction for any player to master.
And that's the essence of Tools and Titans. In every match, your tradecraft unfolds in 6 simple moves: draw, charge, building, act, clash, end.
Simplicity for the novice.
Mastery for the Titan.